Since the late 90s, the Miami Heat has been one of the most successful teams in the NBA. Under the guidance of Pat Riley, they've managed to win 3 championships and have missed the playoffs only 6 times since 1996. However, last season was the most recent occasion in which they failed to qualify for the postseason, and while several changes in the roster made fans hopeful that the team would regain its winning form in the following season, no one was prepared for how good they were about to become. Behind the leadership of coach Erik Spoelstra and all-star wing Jimmy Butler, Miami became one of the best teams in the league. But now, as they're about to play in the conference finals, many are wondering how is it even possible for them to have gotten there. Welcome to Courtside. Today we'll talk about how the Heat's run continues to be one of the season's most pleasant surprises and take a look at how far they can keep it going. As has often been the case with the franchise for the last 25 years, its success can be attributed to Riley's desire to remain competitive every season, his cleverness when putting pieces together, and the famous culture that he and Spoelstra have built together over the last years. During his run as the Heat's president, he's been right most of the time in committing to certain players, and in the few occasions in which he wasn't, he's been capable of maneuvering out of bad financial situations to improve the team's situation. And that's exactly what happened after a mediocre season in which Miami's lone bright spot was Dwayne Wade's retirement tour. Locked with a couple of bad contracts that were hurting the team's capacity to acquire better talent, and seemingly with no room to operate, Riley proved why he's one of the league's best executives by moving several players on his way to acquiring Butler in free agency. The move, which seemed predestined as both parts had been interested in coming together for a while, paid off immediately as the Heat had a bounce-back year in which they were among the East's best 4 teams during most of the season. Their success became a surprise as not only had Butler been seen as a locker room cancer in his previous stops, but there were also many unexpected players making contributions night in and night out. Jimmy was again producing excellent numbers, but perhaps his greatest contribution came in helping rookie point guards Kendrick Nunn and Tyler Herro, second-year shooting guard Duncan Robinson, and third-year forward Bam Adebayo develop into solid and reliable players that helped the team win games. Still, despite their improvements during the regular season as well as in the seeding games, by the time the playoffs started, few people, if any, they continued to impress by dominating the Indiana Pacers in their first-round series, but were matched in the second round against a Bucks team that had the league's best overall record and was expected to make it to at least the conference finals. Most analysts expected Miami to present Milwaukee with a serious challenge before being eliminated, but then, before the Bucks had time to realize what was going on, Butler and his teammates had just closed out the series in 5 games to earn a berth in the conference finals. For all the success the team had during the season, no one expected the Heat to upset the league-leading Bucks, much less to embarrass them by winning the series in what could have been a second sweep if not for a missed call on the final moments of regulation in Game 4. But now that they've made it to the conference finals for the first time since LeBron James left the team, it's worth it to take a look at the things that have fueled their unexpectedly deep playoff run so far. As such, the first thing we must address is the fact that entering the series, it seemed like this was the most favorable matchup for the Heat as they were the only team that had defeated the Bucks 2 times during the regular season. Their effectiveness from long range looked like the perfect weapon against the defense that was often willing to allow open three-pointers in an attempt to close the paint as much as possible, and they made the most out of it, shooting over 35% from three-point range on all 5 games. This would also help them create space and keep everyone involved as at least 5 Heat players scored in double digits in 4 of the 5 games, with the lone exception being the game where Butler scored 40 points. On the other end of the court, Miami also had an invaluable advantage as the Toronto Raptors had already discovered the best way to contain Milwaukee's offense in the previous year. Thus, they closed the paint to limit Antetokounmpo's drives and forced his teammates to score the ball, which, except for Middleton's heroic performance in Game 4, resulted in poor offensive performances by the Bucks more often than not. The strategy also had a direct impact on the reigning MVP numbers, as his production went from 29.5 points per game during the regular season to barely 21.7 over his 4 appearances against the Heat. But just as much as the game plan deserves credit, so do the players for increasing their defensive focus throughout the playoffs. During the regular season, Miami had the league's 12th best defensive rating, but that number has improved to 4th during their playoff games as they've limited their opponents to only 105.4 points per 100 possessions. They've been at their best during the final moments of each game, as they've balanced a not-so-efficient defense during their first and third quarters with a dominant effort during their fourth quarters, in which they've allowed just 97.1 points per 100 possessions. Last but not least, coaching also played a factor in this one. Spoelstra came up with the best game plan and then made sure that his players executed it as good as anybody could have asked for. For his part, Mike Budenholzer was unable to come up with the necessary adjustments to make his team get back into the series and was often questioned for not increasing his players' minutes despite getting behind from the first game. There's also been talk about how Miami was able to make the most out of Giannis's absence because of injury, which could also be said about their series against the Pacers as star forward Domantas Sabonis couldn't play because of injury. However, it's worth noting that while injuries could have had an impact on how both series played out, aside from Miami, Toronto has been the only team to have played with a fully healthy roster since the playoffs started. Also, by the time that Giannis was ruled out because of injury, the Bucks were already down 3-0 in the series, and while he mentioned how he believed that his team had a chance to come back from such a deficit, history has taught us that doing it is easier said than done, and Milwaukee wasn't the exception this time. So in short, it's no fluke that Miami has joined the Spurs as the second team to have reached the conference finals for the 7th time since 2005. Everyone in the organization has been involved in making it possible. It starts from Riley, with him acknowledging that he made a mistake by giving big contracts to players that didn't live up to the expectations, and then making deals to send those players away and replacing them with athletes that have embraced the Heat culture. It goes on to Spoelstra, who's been just as important as Riley and the team's former players in establishing a winning and hardworking culture that made Butler want to join them and has gotten the best out of overlooked veterans and young players alike. And of course, it also goes to the players who've embraced the chance to make of this season a special one. Butler has proved that he's not only a great teammate, but also an excellent leader in the right circumstances. And everyone, from Udonis Haslem to Goran Dragic to Adebayo and the youngest players, have been willing to follow his lead and embrace a willing mentality to help the team get better every day. Now they get the chance to prove that they belong among the NBA's elite by going against a deep and versatile Boston Celtics team that will present them with a greater challenge than both the Bucks and the Pacers did. The match will be the 4th time that the teams face against each other in the playoffs, and the first since the 2012 East Finals, when both squads had formidable big threes that didn't bother in dissimulating that they didn't like each other. If the Heat can get past Boston, there's no telling where this team could go. It would surely make for an excellent story if Butler was able to lead his team to a championship in their first season together. But regardless of whether that ends up happening or not, they believe that they have a chance to do it, and if we've learned something, it is to never count them out. All in all, though it may look like what the Miami Heat is doing came out of nowhere, the matter of the fact is that they've been working for years to make sure that things like this are possible on a regular basis. It doesn't stop being surprising because of that, but it goes to show that this team's only goal is to give itself a chance to win it all year after year. And with a solid and engaged group of hardworking players, they might be able to do just that in a few weeks. But now, do you think that Miami will be able to keep its excellent playing going throughout the following rounds of the playoffs? Or will the challenge be too much for them to overcome? Let us know in the comments. We hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you did, remember to like it and subscribe to our channel for more NBA content. We are Courtside.